All right, so you're here with us because you want to understand the real deal. You want to get to that core understanding of how things work. And today we're diving deep into something that pretty much all of us either engage with directly or at least see its impact of video games. But we're not talking about like beating the high score, cool graphics. We're going to talk about the surprising and profound ways these digital worlds imprint themselves on your brain, stick with you.
Yeah, exactly. We've looked at the research, and it's pretty clear that games, they go way beyond just, being a fun way to pass the time. They're actually interacting with the structure of your mind, like influencing your thoughts, your emotions, even your sense of who you are in ways you might not even realize.
So let's unpack this a bit. We'll talk about how the games you play, they can rewire your brain. That's neuroplasticity. How they push your focus and maybe even overload it sometimes. How they let you escape. And even the ways they use to make you keep coming back for more. We're going to look at the whole psychology behind in-game purchases, kind of moral lessons you might pick up or not pick up, how you see yourself in those avatars, and a lot more. So get ready, because this is going to be full of those aha moments that might change how you look at that controller in your hand.
So let's start with neuroplasticity. Think of your brain like, it's a forest. The more you walk down a specific path, the clearer that path becomes. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to create new paths and make those existing ones stronger, and that's based on your experiences. What's really interesting here is how video games, they're like intense mental workouts that are shaping these pathways all the time. Think of Call of Duty, right? It demands that you make decisions really fast, react in a split second. The more you play, the better your brain gets at processing all that visual info and making those super quick responses. It's almost like your brain is becoming this super efficient machine for speed and reflexes.
So it's not just that in the game you're getting better at reacting, right? Your brain is actually becoming more skilled at picking up visual cues and responding quickly, just in general. Almost like you're upgrading your brain's ability to process what you see. Then you've got these puzzle and logic games, the ones that really make you think. It's like they're putting your problem-solving skills through this intense training program, making those pathways in your brain for analytical thinking even stronger.
Exactly. And there is a potential downside to all this rewiring. The sources we've looked at, they suggest that this constant flow of fast action and quick rewards, it can kind of train your brain to look for that kind of stimulation all the time. As time goes on, this can make things that need more sustained attention, where the reward comes later, things like focus work or reading a long article or book. Those can feel kind of boring. Your brain's used to getting those quick hits of rewards, so slower stuff might not be as interesting anymore.
Makes sense. It's like your brain gets used to expecting that instant gratification. Okay, so now let's talk about cognitive load. Some games, they throw a ton of information at you all at once. You're dealing with resources, checking the map, watching out for enemies, monitoring your health. It's nonstop. Your brain's got to juggle all that at the same time.
What's cool is that all this multitasking in games can actually develop what's called split attention skills. You get good at handling multiple streams of information all at the same time. But, and here's where we circle back to that brain rewiring idea, a brain that's been trained in this constant high stimulation mode, it might find those quieter times where you need to focus on just one thing, like studying or working on a single task. Well, those can feel pretty tough. It's like the baseline for how much information your brain expects has been cranked way up.
Yeah, like going from managing a crazy busy situation to sitting in a silent room. Your brain might feel like it's not doing enough or even get restless. All right, let's switch gears and talk about escaping that room completely. Games, especially those huge open-world games or VR experiences, they offer a really powerful way to escape reality. It's not just about forgetting your problems for a bit. It's about stepping into a whole other reality, one where often you're the one in control.
And this brings up a really important point about the potential long-term effects. Like, sure, escaping every once in a while can be a good way to de-stress. But the research suggests that spending a lot of time in those virtual worlds, doing it all the time, well, that can weaken your real-world social skills. If you're always interacting in this digital space where everyone thinks you're awesome and you're in control, dealing with the messy, complicated, sometimes awkward stuff of face-to-face interaction, it might not seem so appealing anymore. And those skills you need for real-world interaction, they can get rusty if you don't use them.
Makes you think about how much we rely on those in-person cues, right? The subtle things you miss when you're online. And yeah, there's a real chance of neglecting real-life stuff too. Why deal with builds or deadlines when you could be commanding an army or exploring a fantasy world? And for younger players, this deep immersion, it can blur the lines between who they are in the real world and who they are online, which can lead to being unsure about their identity outside the game.
So moving on to a trickier area, addiction pathways. The stuff we've been looking at, it draws a really interesting comparison between how video games are designed and how digital drugs work. It suggests that they both tap into those same reward circuits in your brain.
It's that classic craving, trigger, action, reward loop, and games are masters at using it. Think about it. You're excited to open a loot box. You hear that satisfying sound when you level up. You see all the cool visuals after you beat a hard challenge. It's a constant cycle of feedback and rewards designed to keep you hooked.
And what's really important to note is how game developers use engagement metrics. They're tracking everything you do in the game, figuring out which reward loops are best at keeping you playing for as long as possible. Like the material says, this constant drive for engagement, it can sometimes mean that keeping you playing becomes more important than your well-being.
It really does start to feel less like fun and more like a system that's designed to keep you playing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of systems, let's talk about how games make money. It's not just about the price tag anymore. Now it's all about microtransactions, battle passes, premium currencies, all carefully crafted using psychology.
You got it. It's not just about making money. Look at their pricing right. They
Yeah.
show you 1,000 gems instead of saying $9.99 directly. It creates this mental distance from the actual cost so you don't think as much about how much real money you're actually spending. And then there are those limited time offers and exclusive items everywhere, playing on that fear of missing out, that FOMO.
Right, and they also use social pressure, don't they? They make you want to buy things that your friends have. They create scarcity to make you want things more. They show you what everyone else is buying, so you think you need it too. It's a whole strategy aimed at making you spend more.
And one of the most worrying parts is that young people who are still figuring out how money works, they're being exposed to this all the time. And this can actually shape how they spend money and what they think is valuable in the long run.
Yeah, it normalizes spending real money on virtual stuff, which can be tricky. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the choices games give us. A lot of games have moral dilemmas where your decisions have consequences in the game, like Mass Effect or Detroit. Become Human. How do these virtual choices, how do they affect how we make decisions in real life?
What's really interesting here is this idea of virtual moral training. Depending on the game and the types of choices you keep making, you could be strengthening certain moral frameworks. Say a game rewards you for being empathetic and punishes you for being cruel. Well, that might subtly encourage those values in you. But on the flip side, if you're always in situations where doing morally questionable things leads to good stuff happening in the game, you might become less sensitive to those actions in real life.
So it's like practicing ethical decision-making, even if it's all happening in a made-up world. And the research suggests that people might even start thinking about these moral choices in a very strategic way, like how to get the best outcome in the game, rather than really thinking about whether the action itself is right or wrong.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. The focus shifts from whether something is inherently good or bad to whether it's useful within the rules of the game. Okay, let's talk about how people connect with their avatars. There's often this strong feeling of identifying with the characters we control in these virtual worlds.
Totally. Games give you this unique space to try out different parts of your identity. You could explore different genders, races, personalities. It's all in this safe environment where there aren't any real-world consequences. You can be the hero, the villain, the leader roles you might not usually have in your daily life.
And the research shows that this has two sides to it. On the one hand, it can be therapeutic, allowing you to discover hidden parts of yourself or work through anxieties in a controlled setting. But on the other hand, if this online identity becomes the main source of feeling good about yourself, if you start withdrawing from real-life interactions, then it can be a problem.
It's like living a second life with clearer rules and faster rewards. All right, let's think about how much repetition there is in a lot of games. You're constantly doing similar actions, hearing the same sounds, seeing the same patterns.
And that repetition, like the material says, it's a really fundamental way that we learn and form memories. In games, this constant repetition can subtly program beliefs, values, and even emotional associations without you even realizing it. For example, in games where violence is the go-to solution and it gets you rewards, you might start unconsciously connecting aggression with success.
Or think about how certain characters are always portrayed, like overly sexualized female characters or those stoic, hypermasculine male characters. Seeing this over and over can make you internalize these potentially unrealistic or even harmful ideas about body image, and gender roles, and those constant cycles of winning and losing, the trying hard, overcoming challenges, or facing setbacks again and again, that's bound to affect how we see our own abilities and how much we value ourselves.
Definitely. And going beyond the obvious content, modern games use some really advanced ways to keep track of how we behave. They're analyzing what strategies we use, how often we explore different parts of the game, even how much we spend on virtual items.
It's like the game is always collecting data about you as a player. And then it uses algorithms and all that data to personalize your experience. It adjusts the difficulty, what kind of rewards you get, even the offers you see.
What's super interesting is that the game essentially becomes this personalized mirror, reflecting your own habits back at you. And it subtly guides you towards behaviors that are good for the game, keeping you engaged and encouraging you to spend more, which might not always be in your best interest.
It's a very individual kind of influence. Now, think about those times when you get completely absorbed in a game. Have you ever felt that kind of trance-like state where the outside world just disappears? Music and sound design, they play a huge role in creating that immersion, right?
For sure. Music is incredibly powerful at influencing how we feel. It builds suspense, creates a calm atmosphere, or makes things feel more exciting. And the repetitive background music and ambient sounds in a lot of games, they can actually put you in a mild trance-like state. Your conscious awareness narrows, and you become more susceptible to the game's logic and suggestions.
And if you add the complete sensory experience of VR, or even just playing in a dark room with headphones, your brain is completely surrounded by the game's audio and visuals, and that psychological immersion goes way up.
So to connect a lot of these ideas, the research shows that games aren't just passively entertaining us, they're actively helping to shape who we are. Take role-playing games, where the choices you consistently make put your character on a moral spectrum that can subtly reinforce those same moral tendencies in you.
Or think about multiplayer games where your reputation and social standing in the online community become a part of your identity. And those sandbox games like Minecraft, where you can build anything you want, they encourage a sense of ownership and creativity in a really direct way.
And over time, all these experiences in the game can start to change how you see yourself in the real world. Like the material says, someone who's been leading a big, active guild in an online game for years, they might actually start to see themselves as a leader in their everyday life too. They take that confidence and those skills they learned and use them in real-world interactions.
It's almost like the virtual world becomes a practice space for different parts of our personality and social roles, where it's safe to experiment. And then you have games that focus on simulating real-world systems, like economies, ecosystems, even whole societies.
Right, and the more realistic and detailed these simulations get, the more they can shape how people understand those real-world systems. Strategy games, for instance, they might subtly influence your views on things like political strategies or how resources are managed. Life simulation games can affect your expectations about relationships and social interactions. It's a kind of learning that happens without you even realizing it, shaping your view of the world.
And the way games tell stories, it's super powerful. You're not just watching, you're actually part of the story, making choices that affect what happens. This active participation and emotional connection make the themes and messages of the story really stick with you.
That's right. And how that story is framed can subtly reinforce or challenge cultural stereotypes, nationalistic ideas, political views, even spiritual beliefs. The way a game presents a story, like using the classic hero's journey or the idea of being the chosen one, can actually change how people see their own lives and what they think they can achieve.
It's like we're rehearsing different life stories in these interactive spaces.
Yeah.
Now, for some people, especially teenagers, games can become more than just a way to have fun. They can be a refuge, a safe place to deal with feelings of pain, loneliness, or even trauma.
Yeah, the game world can give them a sense of control and predictability, something that might be missing in their real lives. They can face challenges over and over, feel like they've mastered difficult situations, and find a powerful way to distract themselves from difficult emotions. This can be a good way to cope in the short term. But the research warns that relying on this kind of escape for a long time can sometimes stop people from developing healthy ways to deal with their emotions. It can lead to them avoiding real-world problems.
It's both good and bad. That feeling of safety and control can be comforting, but also isolating. And for those who spend a lot of time gaming, especially in those online worlds that never end, there can be a feeling of, like, an existential crisis when they stop playing.
You spend so much time focused on achieving goals in the game and building relationships with other players. It can make you feel more connected to those virtual accomplishments and relationships than to the real ones in your life. And when you reach a big milestone or the game seems to end, you might feel burned out and struggle to find a sense of purpose outside of the game's structure and rewards. It's like the game has trained you to rely on those external things for meaning.
It's a pretty heavy thought. And we also have to think about how video games reach people all over the world. A game made in one country can be played by millions of people across the globe.
And this has a big impact on how cultures interact and influence each other. English often becomes the common language in online gaming communities. Social norms, how relationships and power dynamics are shown in games, those become accessible to everyone and can subtly change how players see those things in real life. Even basic values like competition, cooperation, or individual achievement, those can be conveyed through the way the game is played. Games have become a powerful way to shape how different generations see the world.
Yeah, it's like a huge exchange of culture happening through these games.
Yeah.
And as we talked about before, repetition is key to understanding how games influence us. It's not just about memorizing combos, it goes way deeper than that.
The constant repetition of how the game works, the precise timing, the strategic decision-making, it doesn't just build muscle memory for specific actions, it also shapes how we react emotionally. We learn to connect certain cues in the game with feelings of excitement, frustration, or victory. The way we make decisions can become more and more automatic based on the patterns we've developed from playing instead of thoughtful and deliberate. And even small visual and audio cues in the game can become powerful triggers for certain mental states. This can affect how we react in real life, especially for younger players whose brains are still developing and for people who spend a ton of time gaming.
It's like our brains are being trained in a very specific way by the game. And at the heart of all this influence is how games tap into our brain chemistry. They're incredibly good at triggering those reward systems in our brains.
Absolutely. Dopamine gives us that feeling of pleasure and makes us want more. Norepinephrine keeps us alert and focused during intense gameplay. Oxytocin can be released through social interactions and multiplayer games. And serotonin contributes to those feelings of satisfaction and safety we get in the game world. It's this powerful mix of brain chemicals that keeps us emotionally hooked and wanting to keep playing. It's not just abstract entertainment, it's having a real physical effect on our brains.
And lastly, it's worth thinking about how some games touch on some pretty deep philosophical ideas. It's not all just action and adventure.
What's amazing is how some games subtly make you think about big existential questions. What happens after we die? Can violence ever be justified? Do we really have free will? Do our choices actually matter? Games like Spiritfarer, Spec Ops, The Line, The Stanley Parable, Undertale, and Detroit Become Human all explore these complex themes through their stories, and they can really make you think. These experiences can plant these existential seeds in your mind, making you think about things long after you stop playing.
It's like they're sneaking in these deep philosophical questions right alongside the fun gameplay. And one last point the research brings up is this God complex effect that a lot of games create without meaning to. When you're put in a position of huge power and control where you can shape entire virtual worlds, how does that affect how you see the real world?
Yeah, that sense of agency and power in a game, it can definitely boost your confidence and make you more creative within the game. But there's a chance that it can also make you think you have more control in real life than you actually do. Spending a lot of time with these godlike powers, it might subtly make us less tolerant of how complex and unpredictable the real world is, where we don't have absolute control. It could lead to unrealistic expectations about how other people should act, or make it harder to deal with situations where we don't have immediate power. We might even become more impatient or feel entitled if real life doesn't bend to our will as easily as it does in a game.
So when we step back and look at the whole picture, the main takeaway is pretty clear. Video games, they have a big and complex influence that goes way beyond just entertainment. They're constantly and subtly shaping how we think, how we feel, and how we act.
Exactly, and how deep and what kind of impact they have depends on a few things. How the specific games we play are designed, our individual personalities, and maybe most importantly, how aware we are of these digital experiences and how they might be affecting us.
So with all that in mind, here's a question for you, our listener. Knowing all this, how might you change the way you play games or how the people around you play games? And are there any parts of how you think or behave that might have been shaped by all the time you spent in those virtual worlds? Definitely something to think about. TLDR games don't just entertain, they imprint.